Music to me is
I don't even understand it sometimes how it happens.
Music is the great equalizer in life.
All of our programming came to a screeching halt.
It's hard to stay in your old life waiting for it to resume when old life might not come back anytime soon.
I heard people that were, going to get jobs driving for Uber Eats.
Forests have been burned down, but up are going to sprout these beautiful green shoots.
I believe that the musician understood more and better than others that it's time to save humanity.
New Orleans.
Smile through your heart.
Amazing.
Music is nothing but communication.
Because what I just want to do every day
is hope.
It's redemption.
It's a beautiful thing.
Music is life, love,
light,
honest,
makes us feel known,
tradition.
And it just feels like home.
We are part of a collective humanity.
Music chooses you.
Is an opportunity to have a conversation.
It's a miracle on every level.
Whatever music needs to be for you to be better, let it be that.
We all hurt, we all cry, we all laugh, and we all hum a tune or two.
Music made me who I am.
It contains the essence of the human soul, one could say.
It's the most powerful thing we have that makes us human. That's life, and that's music.
What is music? What is music to you?
Good morning and welcome to day 4 of Albuquerque Film and Music Experience, the virtual edition. My name's Ivan Weiner. I'm the executive director of the festival. So happy you could join us today. We have an incredible center stage conversation with Chris Gero and our music supervisor, Casper Gomez. Before we get started, I wanted to thank our presenting sponsors, AFME Foundation, Albuquerque Film Office, and film liaison, Cindy McCrossan, Bernalillo County Commissioner Stephen Michael Quezada, Breza Terrena Olive Oil, Comcast NBC Universal, Real Solutions Airport Meet and Greet Service, Sunny 505, the Baker Law Group, University of New Mexico Film and Digital Arts Program, Wells Fargo Advisors and Larry Schwartz, Yamaha Entertainment Group, Jalska Road Productions. For a complete lineup of all of our events that happened already and that are taking place the remainder of the festival, just visit our website at AFMXNM.com. We look forward to having you as part of the experience. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kira Seipler, our Director of Operations.
Thank you, Ivan. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're excited about today's event. We are starting off with our center stage conversation, Exploring the Sound of Us with Chris Gero, and it's moderated by Casper Gomez. I just want to remind everybody that you are able to ask questions of our filmmaker today. All you got to do is put in your questions in the chat box, and we will make sure your questions are answered. Please note all the Q&As and our center stage conversations are recorded and will be available online through October 11th. Right now, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Casper Gomez. He has worked and performed in the music industry for over 25 years. He has carved his name on the sound walls of his native town of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and has built a name for himself as a guitar instructor, sponsoring multiple low-income students with instruments as an incentive to succeed. His latest work is with trumpet player and smooth jazz chart topper Ryan Montano. His next release includes a collaboration with Grammy Award-winning drummer Greg Bessonette. At this time, I'd also like to introduce our special guest, Chris Gero. Chris is a 12-time Emmy Award winner and a Grammy Award-nominated record producer, well known for his visionary style in the music industry. As an accomplished composer and director, The Sound of Us is Gero's second documentary feature film. Gero previously directed the 2014 award-winning feature-length documentary, Nathan East, For the Record. Prior to his documentary directorial debut, Gero produced and directed Elton John's full-length concert film, The $1 Million Piano, which screened worldwide. As founder of Yamaha Entertainment Group and Chief Artist Relations Executive for Yamaha Artist Relations Group, Gero oversees the management and branding of Yamaha's global roster, having signed more than 5,000 artists to date. Also known for his large-scale concert productions, Gero has produced live concert events for some of the biggest names in the music industry, including Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, Elton John, Tony Bennett, Michael McDonald, Norah Jones, Sheryl Crow, and John Legend. Wow, you're a busy guy. Please welcome Chris Gero and Casper Gomez.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Casper, how are you?
Yeah, welcome, Chris. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
Appreciate you,
everybody.
Here. I wanted to kind of, I don't get a chance to talk with music icons in the respect of the industry, and I really feel like you're one of those people.
Today will be no exception, then, Casper.
We can keep the streak running, right? And as far as what people know you for and what you've done, there has been a lot. But at the same time, we have this movie. We have this film called The Sound of Us. And it always was a thing for me to always dive into the science of music and try to figure it out, unlock the secret code, if you will. And the more you explore that realm, you realize it's, and I'm sure, as you've mentioned before, it becomes about the feel of music is really the core of what is emanating, spiritually, emotionally, whatever it is. The feel is where that comes from. You can dial it in, science it up all you want, but if you don't have somebody up there feeling the music, then it doesn't come off as a performance that you can appreciate. You just can't. But you have your hands everywhere, and you had to fit it into a film. And I didn't really know, what you thought when you were doing it. Did you have a goal in mind of all this information you wanted to fit into what you called The Sound of Us, this film? What was the original vision for this film at first, before it was recorded and edited?
Yeah, thank you. It's complex because last year was a rough year for everybody, my household, everybody's household. This year's a rough year. It's a little bit easier, but we're still all in it together. And I really struggled with what we were doing to each other as humans. And I was really in a honestly, very bad space with myself about COVID, about unemployment, about, how we seem to have lost our dignity, in humanity, what we were doing to each other, what we were saying about each other, all these safeties were all coming off. And I started to really look inward about what music meant to me and how it creates empathy and how it unites us and how it has no race or color or discrimination. And one night I was kind of scrolling. I just kept getting caught up in the news of the world. And my son and I were sitting at the kitchen table and he said to me, what's wrong? And I just said, the world is, it's not a good place now. I was fortunate enough to not grow up through any major conflict, in the world, at least not here in our, on my front door, and here we are in the midst of all this turmoil, and I was hoping that my children wouldn't have to witness things like this, and I'm not a very political person, but I just saw everything just kind of falling into a black hole, and he said to me, you're a filmmaker, you got something to say, go out and say it, and so I started to really think about my personal perspective of what music is to me. If I were 25 years old and had a perspective, it would be a very narrow perspective. And I've spent my entire life in this business, and I'm pretty certain about who I am, and I'm pretty certain about the difference between right and wrong, and how we need to treat each other. And music creates, music breaks all these walls down and creates empathy and creates this dignity. And I often say music does not lie. And because of that, we can't really explain the truth that we all feel in it. We don't know why we dance. We don't know why we gravitate, or it makes us better people. And that's what I wanted to explore, was at a time of great division, I wanted to explore this idea that music makes us better, and the why we are drawn to it, unwillingly. So that was really kind of the inception of why we decided to make this film.
Right. Okay. So it was more of an empathetic message in a way. It was kind of you viewing the world, saying, "Oh my gosh, we're in turmoil. We're treating each other like garbage. There's zero empathy for the most part, if you really kind of take a seat back in most situations, and we're split down the middle, and it got to the point where you were saying to yourself, you've got to create this film that kind of encompasses the good in music and how it brings us together unconsciously even. So you start, the film starts out visually. You see all these very natural scenes. It looks kind of like a earth thing. And then we start to break down these individual stories. How did you find all of these people? Just one in particular, pick one. I want to know how you went through finding each one of these individual stories.
Yeah, so we the production unit of the film is very small. It's only about 5 people that did the vast majority of the work, and I have an exceptional team of producers, and we sat down and started to discuss. My direction to them was go and find exceptional people doing exceptional things in music, because my entire theory is we have an obligation in music to do better than and to leave the place better than where we started. And in music, that's just kind of naturally, it's a natural obligation. So they went out. I had some ideas, about what I wanted to present, and then they went out and started to look at a lot of different possible storylines. And so, particularly, like, a really good example of it is Sarah Bachler, who is one of the brilliant writers and producers on the film. She's also a very sharp, very bright young woman who reads a lot and is really tuned into a lot of stuff that's going on all the time, current events and what have you. And she watched a segment on 60 Minutes about this gentleman by the name of Francesco Latoro, who lives in Berletta, Italy, and she brought it to me, and she said, this man has spent his entire life cultivating the lost works of musicians who died, during the Holocaust and in concentration camps. And so we immediately kind of took a deep dive into what that looked like, because that's also, that particular story is, that's not light subject matter at all. You're talking about the deaths of other people, and they died, and the manner in which they died, and the horrific conditions, and still they were making music while this was going on. And this man, it has dedicated his life to bringing that music back to life. And I, immediately fell in love with the story, and I knew it was going to be a difficult story to tell. But it was a story that I felt completely obligated to tell, because it is just so big, and it is so beautiful. And so that's kind of how they came together. They would come and present me the storylines, and I would say, yeah, okay, and honestly, Casper, there was a lot of stories that we started to really kind of go down the track on, and then it would fall apart, or we could never get the subject matter to agree to want to be on camera because they're just too private, or COVID took it, down a different path, what have you. So we, we have about 800 hours of interviews that we did in the course of about 3 months. And we had multiple storylines running at the same time, but we had to pick, it would have been a 7-hour movie, but we had to just start shaving down, to the point that what we thought to be the most impactful for the film.
And that makes sense. I mean, you could go on forever telling stories that music is involved with or embedded in, and I mean, it's embedded in our lives inevitably. But that particular story, and how music was involved, and how music became the catalyst for discovery for people in the situation that you explained, that was powerful. Just that one was like you said, it was a big one. There's some other stories that you tell. Is there any that were not on the film that you really wish would have come through and worked out, or was that something that you kind of just said, okay, these are the stories, this is what we got to use? But was there something that happened that you wish you could have kind of conveyed that you couldn't?
Yeah, there were multiple storylines that I would have loved to explore, but fell apart. And they either fell apart because COVID got in the middle of it, or they fell apart because the subject matter wasn't comfortable. And that's part of the process of making a documentary like this. It is, you're asking people to trust you with their lives, and some of the subject matter, in thinking back, they don't know who we are, and we're essentially saying, expose yourself and be vulnerable, in this, and let me do the rest, let me do the rest of, the rest of it. And sometimes that's just too much to ask of people, so yeah, there were, I don't want to go really into detail about
that makes sense.
what the subject matter is, just in case, somebody comes back and says, "Oh yeah, I want to be in it," or
right. That's
what have you. But it happened 2 or 3 times while we were filming, while we were in production.
You have so much material, and despite me wanting this to happen, did you guys ever consider doing a series based on all these stories that you could have told? Is that something that might come to fruition someday, or maybe a part 2, a sequel?
Yeah. So I mean, it really, the film was designed episodically, and we knew going in that ultimately this was going to be a series. I think almost immediately I started talking to people about what this looks like, as a series. This is this film is it requires thinking, and it requires feeling, and we hope that ultimately it will have a home in a smart place that takes care of it. But ultimately, this is totally designed to be a series. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I know that after each story, there was usually a musical piece, either a performance or a spoken word of some sort. How did you go about, even if it was directly involved with who was speaking? I know they had more than one thing to do or perform. Did you guys have to sift through some of the stuff that you decided to actually use for the musical performances for this movie, or Was that something that you really knew what you needed, or was that something you had to handpick from each person? The musical performances.
Yeah. So, no, it was something. It was something that we picked ourselves. It was something that I already had in mind. Grace Kelly and Elliot Skinner, they sang a song that Grace wrote called "Feels Like Home," and when I first heard the song, I knew that the messaging was right for the film, and so I knew specifically that I wanted that to be in the film. They both are, exceptional artists, and I wanted to treat music as the main character of the film. So although you see a lot of these, you see a lot of these vignettes, and then you see, musical performances, I wasn't just going to show a couple seconds of a musical performance. The music is the main character, and it drives the message of inspiration. So that's how everything that's in there we put in by design.
That makes sense, and what you just explained makes total sense. Is that music is the main character in this film. A lot of people watch it, they get the little stories, they get the heartfelt. It's very very deep, and it pulls tears out of your eyes. But music is the star of the show, and not to be overshadowing the rest of the cast, but it really is. I do have a question from the audience. So, what does music mean to Chris? What does music mean to you, Chris? And how does it shape, or how has it shaped your career and yourself as an individual? I guess to me that would be a two-part question. Did this film seem to change your view of music at all, or did you just say to yourself, okay, now I have what I know on a film that I can present to people, what I feel music is about? Or did this actually change your view of music and how you see music?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the question. I have a very, very complex relationship with music. Music carried me through my life. I was a rascal, and I came up in a really rough and tumble environment, and I watched my two older brothers get into all kinds of trouble, and I was heading right toward that same path. And music was the outlet for me that kind of kept me from, using my upbringing as an excuse to be bad. And honestly speaking, by the time I got into high school, I was so lost in what I was, or who I was, that it was oddly enough music that really kind of found me and turned me into what I am. And there's a segment called "Second Time Around" in Second Time Rounders in the film, about this 55-year relationship between three people: Bill Findyson, Roger Green, and Valerie Nussbaum. And the story is about how Bill Findyson and Roger Green started this marching band for people out of high school that's now celebrating its 40th year anniversary. I just happened to be, a 16-year-old, very lost little kid, and I happened to just walk into the band room of the high school that I was going to, and I had taught myself how to play piano, and I just kind of walked in. I didn't even know why I was even there, to be honest with you. And I sat down behind the piano and I started to play, and out from the band office walks this little guy and peeks around the corner of the upright piano, and he said, "Hey, I'm Roger. Do you want to join the jazz band?" And I was like, no. And he said, "No, I really think you should." And I said, "Sir, I don't even know how to read music." And he said, we can fix that." And that's Roger Green. And Valerie we were in band together, and I just happened to date Bill's daughter for a while. And so it's this is all this stuff that kind of is all, plowed into each other. And although Valerie and I have stayed friends all these years, I from time to time will see Bill and Roger, and then the story of what they have done for other people through music, and how they've stayed connected for all of these years through music is an exceptional story to me. I just knew I wanted to one day tell that story about what they did for each other, and it was fun to hook up again with Roger, and to tell him that those words, we can figure that out, made me for the very first time feel like I actually belonged to something, and music was that connection, and the truth in that for me started me down a path of knowing what I was going, I knew what I wanted to be. I just didn't know who I was, and he kind of helped me feel like I had a sense of ownership in it and a sense of belonging. So, that's a long-winded way to say that was the way that I got underway, and I went about it a real long way, and very, very, very difficult. I got lucky. A lot of people believed in me, but most importantly, I never gave up on believing in myself. It was Roger who set that in motion. What music is to me, and I asked that in the film, music is this very overwhelming sense of love to me. It is in my core, this thing that takes me to this place of complete vulnerability. And if you want to know exactly who I am, just start playing something. It is this undescribable love affair I have with that feeling that just emanates inside of me. And I, in making this movie, I needed to know why. I needed to know why we do this. I needed to know why I do this. And, so the Sound of Us is really an accumulative presentation of the journey that I have taken in my life musically. So it's a very complex way of me narrating this thing about what I am inside through the lens of what other people do.
That makes sense. Music for most people becomes their catalyst for good, their catalyst for staying on top, for not losing ground, for just meditating, even, unknowingly relaxing and playing some music. And then another thing is, a lot of people did get started in middle school band. I did play French horn in middle school, and from that point on went into guitar, and it was kind of like the gateway. My middle school teacher is the one kept telling me, keep going. This is something that you do good. You clearly love it. I would think you're doing yourself a disservice if you didn't keep going on this route. So that's really interesting. Did you have a band at any given point, like a regular, gigging band that you played in, or was already jazz bands the next level up? I'm going to say that right now. Jazz band was always next level up in school. So did you ever have like a group or?
Yeah. So I, I would be the last one to say that I was talented. I just thought I was, and I was too young to really kind of know any different. It took a while for me to mature, maybe last week or something. But I taught myself how to play the piano and the guitar, and that was kind of where I kind of went back and forth. But my influences musically really were really quite simple. The first record I actually ever bought, I literally was in. I was in the store, the record store, and I had 3 records in my hand. One was Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. One was ELO, Out of the Blue, and one was Night Moves by Bob Seger. And I had all 3 of them, and I thought to myself, which one am I going to buy? And at that time, I was, and that's exactly what I bought. And if you know me now, you know, because of the type of music that I write and what have you, is I was heavily influenced by my brothers, who were influenced by Jeff Beck and Roberta Flack and the Eagles and the Beatles and all of that stuff. And coming up through that, like I was and Supertramp and all this stuff, and I had a really robust John Coltrane, all kinds of stuff, and my father was a very studied music guy too, and so there was a lot of Miles Davis and Herb Alpert and all, and so I had a really robust diverse background in music, but I gravitated. So the record that I bought, my first, I think it was $10. At the time, it was a double record called Electric Light Orchestra Out of the Blue, and I'm a very visual person, obviously, and so I would sit and play that record in the dark with my headphones on, and nothing but the light of the glow of the receiver, on the floor, and I could visualize all of everything on the record and how complex, especially at the time, it was to make a record like that, and fell madly in love with that process, and then so I would play those records, and I'd play the piano and what have you, and then I started taking lessons from a Brazilian blind jazz pianist who has long since passed. His name is Manfredo Fest, and he was a dear man. He was very patient, and I just said to him, just teach me the stuff. I don't want to know the theory, just teach me the stuff. And so he was really great, and then shortly thereafter, kind of Hollywood came calling, and I started gigging out, by myself, and then ultimately had a backup band, and even that was very complex because it was a very big horn section, and it was all this stuff, and it was very complicated, and I just didn't know how hard that was at the time. I was just too young, and then from there, I went out to Los Angeles and started working with, a bunch of famous people, and, I had a little development deal, and they wanted me to be an artist, and I didn't want to be an artist, and that didn't last very long, thank God. And then I started producing, and I started working with, a bunch of famous people, and I was really young, and I think everybody honestly felt sorry for me, or just dug that I was just too stupid to know that I really wasn't that talented. I just, my ego or my lack of maturity in it was just so out front. I found myself in situations that I had no business, being in, or writing with people that I just, I don't know how that really kind of came together, but those friendships, have lasted to this day, and everybody's like, remember when you were 17? I've known you forever, like it's that kind of thing, and in which, part of the, I would say part of the remarkable spirit of getting here is always pushing yourself and getting past your internal demons, thinking that you're not capable of having something to present, because in music and in art, everybody is equal at the table, and that's the truth of it. From time to time, I'm asked to critique somebody else's music, and there's a music radio show, very well known one here in Nashville, and a friend of mine runs it. And I was on being interviewed, and he said, "Yeah, I want you to, here's some demo reels. I want you to interview, review." And I just said, I can't do it. And I was just live too, and I just said, I can't do it because I'm nobody to say somebody else's work is no good. Everybody in this business has something to bring to it. It doesn't matter how good or bad you are. And I look at, especially like a band like ELO, if you actually look at their first records, it took them about 6 records to get to what they ultimately came to, where Jeff Lynne ultimately figured out songwriting and producing, and we just don't live in that day and age anymore, where you have the ability and you have the runway to actually create yourself. It's just like now or not. And that's a to me, that's a, you know, a tragedy, because if you looked at me at 18 years old or if I looked at myself at 18 years old and who I am now, and I was judged at 18, it's just an entirely different animal. That's a lot of information I just gave you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So you never really had a band. You kind of just, they wanted to make you an artist.
No.
They
Yeah,
wanted to
that's
make you an artist. Clearly, you were just like, no, I think I'm in the creative. Is that really what it
Yeah.
broke down to?
I'm very shy. So, and most people don't really understand that. And you know, I've learned to completely tell the truth in my maturity. Like I'm not afraid to say, this is how I got here. And
Right, now you're not.
yeah, no, you know, when you're young and it's rough and tumble, you disguise it as a lot of things, and a lot of artists do that. They disguise themselves up as something that they're clearly not. I just couldn't live in that, and I knew I was just too shy and ultimately just not talented enough to be something unique and special. And so I just said, you know, I would rather tell you what to do than tell myself what to, or have other people tell me, you know, what to do. Or I'd rather make music this way, you know, where it's on my terms. So I just went into producing.
I do have to agree. You know, you get to the point where, and then there's some situations where you do want to play. You do want to play the instrument. And it's clearly, you know, some people, they just don't like to be out in front of everybody playing an instrument, being the star. And that makes total sense. And then you get those other people that just love to do it. And they do that easier when they have someone helping them and telling them what to do. And that's why we need guys like you, because even the best artist in the world sometimes just doesn't know how to do that delivery right. And they have to have a director, a producer, somebody that helps them shape that. You know, I really always felt that music was a messenger. You know, and you mentioned how, like, music you don't really have the time now to allow music to let you grow the way it did back then. You know, music, the industry has changed the way people create music, which then changed the way the emotion was affected during the creation of the music. And I think a lot of the emotion is left out of music based on the ability that people have to create music so easily. It's so simplified. In the theory of, you know, using parts like samples and creating a drum beat and then just, you know, maybe rapping over it. And I feel like what you said about how, you know, times are different and you were able to grow with music in a different way than people are able to grow with music now. Do you feel like this film is kind of like your love letter to music? We had somebody say that this is it's so deeply moving, and your depiction of artistic expression, it resonates so strongly in the film, and what they said is, would you consider this film a sort of love letter to music, your sort of homage to music for you?
That must have been my mom. Thanks, Mom. I don't think it was. The Sarah McLachlan refers to it as what does she call it, Ben? Sorry, I'm gonna have to go off camera here. I think
That's
she
okay.
refers that to my love letter to humanity, and this film is a very personal statement about how music makes us better people. You know, if you watch the first 10 minutes of it, you said it, Casper, you might think it's like a planet Earth piece because it's very ethereal, and there's a lot of, like, we start knocking around on, you know, the science of it, and, you know, and the fact that, you know, our cells vibrate, and, you know, nanocells vibrate, and the universe vibrates, and everything has a rhythm to it. Well, we came into this world over, you know, thousands and thousands of years, you know, inheriting everything that was before us, and music was first before language. So the thing that's built inside of us genetically, unexplainably, inside of us is the reason why we give in to music. It's the reason why we feel, if we look at something and then you attach music to it, the depth of which you understand it just exponentially grows. You actually, it becomes more of a three-dimensional hurt or joy, or music creates that. I cannot explain to you why that happens. I can only explain to you how it happens while I'm showing it to you. So this is a very, very personal note to myself and to the world to breathe, and we're going to be okay. And music makes us better, and music creates our ability to be good, and hopefully the film that we made inspires people to change where we are, to change in the now, to own it, and to just just explode in the okay, and to celebrate what we all are through music.
It's beautiful, man. And the film does say that to me. I mean, it does. It made me feel more united with people through music, even without music, just knowing how we all appreciate music, that could bring us together. Music, again, I just want to say, always ends up being a message. Music has delivered some pretty strong messages. There's been musicians that have been killed because of their message and when it was being delivered and why it was being delivered. And then you break down, the nature of it, and I don't want to go too much into the science, but other creatures on this planet deliver their messages through music and sound. Music is just sound. We can say it's more finitely organized sound, and particular organizations will derive particular emotions or particular signals of either, run or stay here or be on guard. I mean, if we hear a siren running down the road, we've already been conditioned to understand what that sound means. When we hear a particular song, that song may derive a particular memory. But even if we have nothing to do with something that you're hearing, like a song, the message is still there. It's that invisible obviousness that we have. And then you break into the whole using music to deliver a message where you know exactly what they're saying. And I want to go into the Amazing Grace piece and how the different type of impact was felt knowing that it was delivered in that way. Amazing Grace is a song that's been sang over and over, and I think that there's a history to that song that we want to explore here. And I wanted to give you a chance to explain that. Tell us about the Amazing Grace piece.
Yeah, thank you, Casper. Yeah, so this is a bit of a deep dive, so you're just going to have to kind of follow along. I was producing a record on an artist by the name of Nathan East, and it was his second record that I had the honor of producing, and it was actually in 2014. And Amazing Grace to me is a very sacred piece of music, and every time I hear it, I pretty much fall apart. And because for me, as for the vast majority of people who know the song, and it's just about everybody because it's the most recorded piece of music on the planet in the history of all music, and so I suggested doing a big orchestration of Amazing Grace to Nathan for his second record, and so we started to explore it, and I sat down with Lendl Black, who does all my orchestrations, and I had a very specific thing in mind, and I played it for him, and then we wrote notes, and he went off and he orchestrated it, and then we came back and we recorded it with the symphony, and Nathan and I kind of debated whether or not it was right for the record. he wasn't feeling it the same way that I was. And oftentimes when you have a really, really strong-minded producer like I am, I'm pretty sure of where the direction should go. And sometimes that doesn't really kind of jive with where the artist wants it to go. And so I kind of licked my wounds, went to my corner, and we scrapped it. But at the same time, my father was dying, and I was in the middle of recording this, and my father died of cancer, and I told you this was a deep dive. But this is how this all came together. So I was going back and forth to Canada, while we were recording, and my father and I were very close until I was 10, and then he disappeared for 30 years, and then he just kind of showed back up on the scene. And for those last 10 years, we were quite inseparable. But I never really allowed him to really explain those 30 years until really kind of the very last day I saw him, and I let him go there. And one of the, he would try to repent or start to, reminisce or lament about, how he failed me, and I would never let him go there. And on the very last day, just a day or so before he died, he's very, very devout Catholic, and he kept saying to me, 2 priests. I'm going to need 2 priests to say my funeral. 2. Make sure there's 2 of them. Make sure there's 2. And devout Catholic, and in Catholicism, I'm not really anything anymore. I grew up and just kind of fell away from the church. I always used to find it very amusing that in the Catholic religion, at the end, you can just say, forgive me for everything I've done, and you're good to go. And that always, even as a kid, it used to really kind of I was just like, is it really that easy? And right at the very end, I said to him, he was saying 2 priests, and I said, what's in your closet that is keeping you up at night, that you think that you need double indemnity to get to heaven? And he really wouldn't answer me, and he was quite frail and quite sick, and sure enough, there was 2 priests. But at the same time that's going on, I'm in the middle of the production of Amazing Grace, and I just happened to open up Wikipedia or something and started reading about the history of Amazing Grace. And it's this story about this gentleman named John Newton, who was a slave trader, who was on his way home from Sierra Leone on a slave ship, and it almost sank, and he almost lost his life. And that was in 1746, I believe, or 48. Don't quote me. Right in there around that time. And when he got better, he actually just went right back out and started slave trading again until he had a heart attack, and then he couldn't. And so he started to find religion, but at the same time, he continued to finance slave trading. And that went on for many, many years after he became a clergyman. And I'm giving you this big, long history thing, but the inception, and so it took a really long time until the late 1700s, when he wrote Amazing Grace about himself and about how God, forgave him for being the wretch, as he refers to. And so this was a very specific hymn written about himself. And the beauty about Amazing Grace is that everybody takes what is written and makes it about them. Cultures like the Irish think it's about them, and there's all this, all different people gravitate toward it because it's a very personal message about the uniqueness of your individuality. So it took him 40 years to decry slavery, and he was a big part of the abolishment of slavery in England in 1804. It took almost another 60 some odd years for it to happen in a civil war in the United States, and then it took almost 200 years for us to get to where we are, for it to become part of the Black culture that they took as this is about me working my way through slavery and then through civil rights and what have you, when the truth of it is, it was never about that. And a lot of people just don't really understand that. How this all kind of connects together was I needed to deconstruct probably one of the most important songs as well. A lot of people don't know that the actual music, Amazing Grace, was a piece of music called New Britain that was written and published in the 1840s. So the hymn started first in the late 1770s. Then in the new revival, the second revival of the southern United States, Kentucky, Tennessee, what have you, it got attached to this piece of music, and then it took on a different meaning, and it's been reinterpreted and reinterpreted and reinterpreted all for many years. And this is the beauty about a piece of music as art, is that it gets to be reinvented and it becomes something else. But for me, I was stuck on this message of, why did it take so long to do the right thing? Why did it take so long? And why do you get to repent about it at the end of your life and not change it in the now? And so I wanted, that was actually the very first component of the film that I wanted to tell the story of, because it was so powerful and it was so meaningful and it has a home in everyone's heart. But most people don't understand the truth of it. And it's it's long journey to get here. So I sat down, with the producers and said, what I want is I want this gigantic soaring score. We since then, even though we recorded the original track in 2014, we then went back and we rewrote it to spoken word completely from scratch and re-recorded it completely, and so I sat down with one of the producers, an incredible young lady, very, very bright young lady. You're welcome, Jalissa. Her name is Jalissa Gasho, and she, she was fairly new to this type of work, and especially working with me around this. And I said, find me the people who can make this, because this is really going to be hard to do. And so we started looking around for the right type of person that could deliver this completely, the frame from the basement up, to reconstruct this interpretation this way. And she got on it and would not let up. And I just kept saying, it's too hard to do. It's too hard to do. It's too hard to do. And she just stuck on it. And it was amazing. And she's really she's a bit of my muse, so to speak, and she just stayed on the story. She believed in it so, with such, ferociousness and just temper, and she stayed. All that to be said, a producer, brilliant musician, beautiful man. He's in the film. Will Wells introduced us to Sekou Andrews. He said, I think this is going to be the perfect guy for you. And so we started talking, and I explained to Sekou what needed to be done. And he said, yeah, I'll have it done in about 3 days. And I'm really into it. I didn't know this backstory. I'm really excited to do it. And he realized, and he even said it. He was on, I think, yesterday on the conversation I was watching yesterday. He wasn't prepared for how deep he had to go within his own soul to create what needed to be done and what needed to be said. And that the whole time, Jalissa was like, "This is going to be great. This is going to be great." And I kept like going, "I don't know if we can pull it off. I don't know if we can pull it off." And then Ben, who's here in the room, who was the DP in the film, flew over to California, and I jumped in on a Zoom call and directed it. And the result is this absolutely stunning 7-minute one-take delivery that is probably one of the most amazing 7 minutes of film that I've ever witnessed in my life. Not because I directed it, because Sekou is just stunningly beautiful, brilliant. And, after the take, they said to me, what do you want to do different? And I just said, we have everything we need. It was originally supposed to be a 3-minute performance, and I just couldn't. I didn't have the heart to cut it up. And so what you're seeing is raw and real and beautiful and an entirely deconstructed reinterpretation of how we really should be looking at that piece of music, and how we all own that piece of music, and what it means, to us. So that's a long story, but the reason why I made it was because my father inspired me to look at what's wrong in the now and change it in the now. John Newton's life was, why didn't you do it in the now? And we know in the now what we're doing wrong as people. I grew up watching reels of, the civil rights and what have you. And I thought to myself, well, that was a really barbaric time. For me, not a lot has really changed. We're kind of going backward. Change the now. Do it in the now. We know it's wrong. Do it now. And that's what this song, that's what that segment represents.
So I want to ask you, you said that it was supposed to be a 3-minute performance. Was that partly improv? Did you have any script on what he was going to say?
Yeah, he wrote the whole piece.
Yeah,
and
so,
he was gracious enough. I mean, we did a read down, all of us on the phone together, and I just remember weeping like a baby. And he's just reading it, and I'm thinking, I got off the phone just bawled, because I just knew how powerful this was going to be and how beautiful this was going to be, and. We're in a place where we're all in this together. It doesn't matter what color, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you come from. We're in this together. No one's better than anybody else. And I didn't know him, and I had to trust him to deliver this idea. And he said to me, "What do you want to change?" And I just said, "Nothing." And I called him later after the first. I actually saw the first edit, and I was bawling like a little, like a little schoolboy, like on his first day of, kindergarten. I was just like, ooh, trying to talk to him on the phone, like just saying, I hope you're prepared for what's coming. And all the journalists all say the same thing. Like, man, what is this? Who is this guy? He's just stunning. And we're hoping this makes it for him.
Yeah, no, man, it was beautiful. I mean, I've heard spoken word before, and I understand that it's got to be delivered a certain way. It is a performance, but when the passion is there, and it was clearly coming directly from the soul and the heart and the spirit, that's when you get the best spoken word, and that was flawless, man. That was amazing. And I was just so curious about how, if he improv'd, and I don't do spoken word. I'd probably be a horrible spoken word person, because I'd be trying to figure out if I'm on track or whatever. But yeah, that was flawless. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about, I mean, you create, but you have a lot of people around you that create. And as far as film is involved, when you start mixing music and film, I'm sure that there's variables and problems that occur that you wouldn't have if you were just recording the song, or if you were just shooting the video. As a creator, as a person that works in film, do you ever find yourself, give me your biggest issues when you're trying to create a piece of music for film versus creating a piece of film for music? I'm curious about what you run into and what your challenges are. And again, vice versa. If you have to create some music for film, what's your approach?
I'm a little bit handicapped, and I have an advantage at the same time. I know what I want musically. I've never worked with another composer on a film that I've directed. So I'm very in tune with the visual style and the for example, the Francesco Lautaro piece, if you go back and listen to that, that is a really complex piece of music. I'm not saying, dig me, I wrote this really complex piece of music. It's just I knew the depth of the subject matter, and I knew that the score had to match the visual impact components of what we were about to show you.
And the story.
So if you go back and you watch that segment itself, it's this very, very lush, very romantic score that all leads up to this tension point where Francesco is telling the story of the subject matter, Jack Garfine, and the horror of being a 13-year-old little boy in living in absolute hell, and so all of this big huge orchestrated movement moves up to this one thin tension line, and then you hear this little boy sing these 16 bars, and the tension line just starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it goes right back to just that little boy singing this 16 bar Yiddish song, and then the entire piece of music blossoms and just opens straight up, and we take that 16 bars of that song that he kept to himself for 74 years, and we celebrate that entire piece of music on the other end of it. I don't know if a lot of directors understand the magic of that. Composers like, I'm no John Williams or James Newton Howard or any of those people. They understand how to create that magic in cues as they're seeing a piece of film. I do it entirely in reverse, where I know that we're going to have to get there, so therefore, the film has to be built that way first, so it matches the piece of music that I ultimately know. So I have an advantage of knowing how the story needs to be told and how the visual optics. Now, in the reverse, I will we will film something and then I have to put a piece of music to it. And sometimes I have to struggle with where that's going to fit. And I'll sit and start writing a piece of music and we'll say, okay, that doesn't work. Okay, that doesn't work. And that doesn't work. And that doesn't work. And that doesn't work. And until finally I land on something that I feel like I settled on, or I will, it's kind of a little like fishing, to be honest with you. I'll start in a piece and then I get really super lucky and something really, really works. And then I say to Ben, we're going to have to re-edit this completely so that it'll work to the music. And that happens a lot too.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, your perspective from doing almost every aspect of the film will lead you to different variables. But yeah, huge advantage if you're doing it all on your own, which you kind of.
Yeah. Typically, I'm very selfish about composition. I love to write for orchestra. Because I love being in the room with other musicians and listening to them talk about what we're creating. And here in Nashville, they don't get to do that. The symphony folks, they don't get to do that a lot. They're typically, they're either playing they're playing on video, a lot of video game, stuff, and that's big orchestra stuff. But typically, they're doing a lot of like country, some pop, but this is big stuff, right? And so it's fun to be in the room. It's fun to start, with little notes on a piano, and then it become, this 100-piece thing with this gigantic choir. And that's, typically my hands are always in a lot of stuff, but this film in particular, I knew very early on that I would have to kind of wear a lot of hats on it, especially musically, because that was the story.
It's really interesting. I'm just a musician, and I've tried to do some film stuff, mostly in the form of green screen, toilet humor. That's kind of where I go to with my filming. Clearly, I don't have the tools that I need to. But as far as my goal is, at some point, I do want to do my own music video, to the very least, some sort of video that accompanies my music. Is there any goals you still have for either music or film? Given The Sound of Us, I would view as a pinnacle in your career and even in society. But is there some things that you still want to get done? Is there a goal for Chris? Is there something you're still going after?
Yeah, I'm just getting going. I've been doing this a long time. I often say to people, I don't get up to go to my job. I get up to go to my life. And I have, I work for Yamaha. I've worked for them for 28 years. They are a remarkably gracious, trusting organization to allow me to be me, and to take risks, and to get out there and do big things. And more, please, more. That's all I want. I just want to do what I do. Yeah, I love doing it. I love the camaraderie. I love how hard it is. I love sitting in a room with other creators and crying, and and knowing what you're doing is changing people's lives, and having that power, knowing how important the message of what you're doing, and to have people say, what you did means something. We have a lot of people saying, I can't wrap my head around what you just presented. I have to go and process this. It means the world to me. And to have that received, because this is what it is. It's communication, right? And it is creating conversation about where we really should be. It's something that I'm quite proud of, and I'm very proud of the people around me. I'm very proud of the company that I work for, that stand behind this message, that believe in this message. And so, I would like to have another 20 years at doing this.
That makes sense. I mean, you're already doing what you do. You're already doing your goals. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I really respect somebody that does not look at what they do as their job, in the sense that the job is always somewhere you got to go and do, so that then afterward you get to go back to your life. Whereas somebody becomes successful, I think, is when they actually do what they do every day and they just love it and they don't think about it as a job.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you, I mean, you're really lucky that you have an amazing position with such an amazing company. I mean, I remember being so impressed by Yamaha just from a product standpoint. When I go to the NAMM show, they have their own, everybody's got a booth or whatever, or a section. They have their own hotel with just products. And I always thought that was amazing. The fact that you have that, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that you're a lucky man, but at the same time, you've worked hard. You've done a lot. You've now conveyed your passion for music and your feelings towards music in an amazing film called The Sound of Us. I think that if anybody had goals for their life, most people would say they could die happy doing everything that you've done so far. As a musician, I did want to ask you something on the industry side. I know that you work with a lot of musicians, and I know what the model musician was back in the day. The model for the musician now is totally different. And if I had to tell somebody that was really trying to do some film work or anything in the industry as a musician, what would be the biggest tip that you would say to lend them a hand in having to model themselves to something? It could be anything that you feel. I know you know what I'm talking about. There's an approach that you have to have as a musician when you want to do a particular type of work. But give Nathan East, for example, how has he become so successful? And if I wanted to kind of do the same thing, what do I need to do?
Yeah, Nathan, he's an ill-tempered, evil man.
Oh, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, no. It is quite. It is, in Nathan's case, it's quite simple. Hard work and humility. And the hard work part, that's a singular attribute. It's the second part that's really hard. It is the hardest part. And I would love to say that I get it, but I don't. I'm a creative with a very fiery side and a very, I expect a standard to be presented that it has. There's a very, very steep ladder you have to walk up it in order to get there, and that's not for the faint of heart. Nathan is a extremely hardworking, generous man, generous in heart, vulnerable and humble. And I don't portray those same qualities, not all of them. Just honestly speaking, and because we all come up differently, and we all have different attributes that we bring to success. Nathan understands that being good and being present in the room, and it's not about him, is what has made him successful. He's a very giving individual, and he's a very patient individual.
And that creates longevity. It creates longevity in the industry.
It totally does. And we're not all wired that way. We just simply are not. I work very, very hard. Like I said, I have a very, very high standard. People come and get on board with us, and they get it at the top, and then they realize how hard it is, and then it's not for them, or my personality is just too strong for them to they one day I'm amazing, and the next day I'm not amazing, but for me, I drive the success all the way around. All boats rise with the tide, so to speak. And so in order to do that, sometimes you have to push people to be their best. And sometimes people don't want to be pushed. New musicians coming up, I
just got to say one thing.
Yeah.
Every person, it seems, born recently, it seems like they have this they want that instant gratification. And in the music industry, you've got to build those relationships little by little. And you can't just walk into a room and expect them, no matter how much notoriety you have, to see you as the rock star that you see yourself. You're there for that job that day. Sometimes you're there for that gig. And I think that a lot of people nowadays just want to be who they see in the limelight. They think that that's the goal. And and as far as people that have been successful in the music industry, the rock stars and the ones that partied like rock stars fell short really quickly. The ones that didn't party like rock stars and played like musicians are the ones that are still in the industry and still doing stuff today for the most part. You have the variables, but as far as what a person needs to do now, it hasn't changed. The humility still has to be there. You walk into a room and you just be nice to everybody. And 9 times out of 10, people tell me they're going to pick the guy that's just cool to be around versus the guy that's really good. And they both can do the job. And then maybe you like that guitar solo that other guy did. It was really cool. But working with this guy for weeks has been way better because he's just a calm, collected person,
Yeah. Life's too short. Do the work. Be the best that you can be. I listen to all kinds of music. I still do. I'm really, really subjected to, pop music, current pop music, because I have 4 young children. And
wait, I got to ask you then, who's your favorite pop artist currently? You don't have to have a name, but you can mention a song.
Yeah, there's a lot of honestly. There's a lot. I'm fond of a lot of folks. Shawn Mendes. Who's the little redheaded guy that I was talking to? Sorry, his name's completely.
Like I said, you don't have to mention the name. Maybe a song, but yeah.
Keith. They're managed at Rocket Entertainment. Huh? No. Oh, anyway. Oh my God. Sorry, I'm just. Of course.
Okay.
There's so many. Of course.
There's so many.
Yeah, I listen to everything. Dua Lipa, I'm a big fan of. Ed Sheeran. That's So I was actually standing in front of his. Ed is managed by Elton's group, and I was coming back from lunch with Elton's manager, and this little guy is just standing in the door, and he says, I'm Ed, and and we just kind of started talking. But I'm a huge fan of his. Whenever anybody asks me, these kind of start rattling off people's names, I blank completely. I don't know why.
Okay.
But I listen to the Pulse on XM every day. The car ride there and back. The kids. That's all, my kids. All they want to do is listen to music. But I've subsequently really realized how much music has changed.
Right.
Well.
Does it allow you? Yeah. Does it allow you to find inspiration to create new things that may sound like these new things you're hearing, or do you kind of just stick to your guns and say?
Yeah, honestly, Casper, I'm watching music. Music is very secular, and we all know that.
True.
And I'm watching, I'm listening to, what top 40 is. And first of all, a lot of top 40 artists are just it's exactly that. The Weeknd has a hit out right now, and it just sounds like the band Aha, and in the same rhythmic, same techno feels, blah blah blah. I'm feeling like, and I don't want to be disrespectful, really, to really anyone in particular, but
I understand.
Nothing really original is
right.
hitting. It's just some stuff, the stuff we've seen, kind of previously. But the Miranda Lambert song, the drunk song. My kids sing, I'm drunk and I don't want to go home. My kids sing that at the top of their lungs, and my oldest one is like 11 years old, and I'm like, okay, whatever. There's nothing for me that's so original.
It makes sense. But, everything's been. At this point, you got to consider, music is recycled in the sense of people love what they hear and they want to perform those songs. Most people that write music, and there's those rarities where these people just write. Elton John is a good example. The guy just writes, he was made to write music, as far as I'm concerned. That's what he was meant to do. But as far as in general, it's very hard to find artists these days, and I think it's because of the way the music industry has shaped the musician growing up. Like you mentioned, it's like they haven't had that sit in a room constantly playing by themselves. There's just so much more exposure and so much more distractions. They got their phone right there before they even sit there and practice. They're sitting there looking at their phone, and I think to kind of hit on what you're talking about, there are musicians out there. There are actual musicians who are actually out there shedding their craft, and in the era of instant gratification, it's not being driven by one of the things, and I don't want to sound like an old geezer here, but the craft of songwriting, the craft of visually telling a story and of owning it musically is gone. There may be some folks out there that almost every single song that I listen to on top 40 radio is about love or getting it on or some stuff. It's not about breaking up.
Or breaking. Yeah, it's not about it's not about the depth of somebody being killed. Or
it's a very vague description of stories. It's not an individual's story. It's everybody can relate to it in the sense of it's universal, but there's the lack of connection there. It's just a song at that point, it's not.
Yeah, and there were bands. I think this, as far as pop music was concerned, I think the 70s was like the really last great era of great songwriting and great playing, and
because
great
it was raw.
harmonies.
It was just so raw.
And now it's just a very different
it's a very different environment. And like I said, nothing super original has come along, that is just like, now we are, now we're moving into a different era. We're just really kind of recycling all of the stuff that we've seen before.
I think that it got to the point where they tried to make it more technical in the sense of like bands like Tool, even Rush, progressive bands, and then everywhere you veer out of music too far. And I'm talking about the core elements of music, of what people have listened to forever and what the common song kind of would sound like, is that if it goes too far out anywhere, it just becomes lost in the shuffle. It becomes lost in translation. You have bands like Animals as leaders. Have you ever heard of these guys? 2 8-string guitar players that would just make any guitar player say, okay, I give up. The drummer is like a machine. And that's kind of, again, it goes to that limit where it's like, it's amazing. And they're incredible players. But again, it loses the cohesion with the soul and the heart and the message, and it just becomes a song, And I think
sorry,
let me wrap something up because we're getting close to the end. And I want to say that you have encompassed the side of music that I feel is lost in this film. You have captured what music means to us, even when we're acting and even oblivious to it. Like a lot of the new artists and the new music is being created from. I think that people are oblivious to that connection with music. I really do. I don't know if you feel the same way, but
yeah,
I think that's
again,
where
we're just in a we're in a weird time where it kind of feels like a lot of creativity has been suppressed, and the continual collapse of music and art in schools and what have you, and then for me, and this is not necessarily a political statement, it just felt like the last administration really suppressed a lot of the arts, and we kind of started going super backward, and this isn't something that belongs to any political party. This isn't something that music is something that is celebrated from within each of us, and the message of the film was, and why it was created was because we have to continuously remind each other that we are all in this together, and that's what music does.
Exactly. And that's where I was coming from, is if we can make that connection, we can kind of see what we've been missing, and I feel like, again, it recently, like you said, has been the case. We've really been clouded by all these issues, and it's not allowed us to connect to each other the way we can, and music is the catalyst. It always has been, man. Thank you, Chris, so much. This has been amazing. I really appreciate you giving us your time, for letting us talk to you, ask all my questions and the audience's questions. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, Casper, thank you. It's an honor to have spent this time with you guys. I just want to thank everybody at the Albuquerque Film Festival for honoring us by playing the film. Thank you, Ivan Weiner and all his group, and it's an honor to be with you guys, and I'm very excited that we got to spend this time. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you again.
Thank you, Casper and Chris. That was a great conversation. And make sure to tune in tonight at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for the movie, The Sound of Us. Again, there will be another film Q&A with Chris afterwards, so please join us after that. Stay tuned for our next Center Stage conversation with Francis McCain and Rebecca Wiggins at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Remember, all of our conversations are recorded and will be available online until October 11th. Until then, have a great day.